Okay, we're going into the intro at the station. Probably about 30 seconds. Thank you, and good evening, and welcome to WCBC's Candidate Forum for those seeking election as delegates in District 1. District 1A, representing all of Garrett County and the Georges Creek and Westernport areas of Allegheny County. District 1B, representing most of Allegheny County, and District 1C, representing eastern Allegheny County and western Washington counties. The forum was initially scheduled for earlier in the month and had to be moved due to a conflict for both of the 1A candidates. As a result, Mike McKay, a Republican who is in the incumbent position in District 1C, was unable to make it this evening due to another commitment. We apologize for the confusion and the inability to find a date when all can make it. And Delegate McKay did provide us with a statement I will read in its entirety. Delegate Mike McKay is unable to attend tonight's delegate forum due to a prior commitment he made in July to participate as a member of a legislative panel at the annual Rural Maryland Health Conference. He was available for the original scheduled date of October 9th. He regrets the conflict and is available to answer any questions by calling him at 301-697-2622. As always, our goal tonight is to let you know more about each of our candidates. While we aim to be fair, our overriding interest is for each of the candidates to be able to communicate their positions on the key issues facing the state of Maryland and Mountain Maryland. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer each of the questions. If a candidate who has already answered is challenged by another candidate in the same district as to his or her answer, he or she will be given a 30-second rebuttal. You raise your hand and we'll go from there. WCBC General Manager Mary Kleitz will be taking care of timing duties. She will show a red card with 30 seconds to go and ring the bell at the end of time. Our panelists tonight, WCBC Morning News anchor Dick Yoder, Greg Larry from the Cumberland Times News, and Kathy Getty from First United Bank. Now, I should note up front that we had a little bit of a fright here about a half an hour ago on the way down to the forum. Delegate Wendell Beitzel, who is here, was rear-ended on Interstate 68 by a truck, a big truck. And there is no truth to the rumor that it had a Savage River Lodge license plate number on it. Mike Dreisbach is his opponent, and he runs Savage River Lodge. So anyhow, we're going to make a little light of it because we know everybody's okay. And in the midst of that, another participant, Delegate Buckle, went to pick up Delegate Beitzel. So that works. And to be fair to everybody, Penny Walker and Daniel Del Monte are here too, so I mentioned everybody by name. Okay? Now, with the first question for our candidates, here is WCBC Morning News anchor Dick Yoder. Dick?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paul. And it is good to see everybody here this evening. Everybody intact and ready to go. Seeing that we're here at Allegheny College of Maryland, I thought perhaps one of the first questions we could ask is, what are your thoughts on the legislation that provides free community college for many Maryland residents?
And we will start at the end of the table and move down, and then we'll move back, and then we'll jump around a little bit. We'll try to stay in district, though, so voters out there listening and watching tonight can get a feel for the candidates back to back. With the first answer will be the survivor of the accident, Delegate Wendell Beitzel from District 1A. Wendell?
Thank you, Dick, and thank you, Paul, and thank you, WCBC, for holding this forum for us here this evening. In Garrett County, we already provide free tuition to all the students that graduate from Northern and Southern that go on to Garrett College. In addition to that, the county provides also funding for people who want to go on to trade school. Senator Edwards and I introduced legislation to allow the commissioners, to give the commissioners the authority to raise the accommodation tax in Garrett County so that the county would have funds to provide the funding for the students in Garrett County to have free tuition at Garrett Community College. That was really an economic development measure that would not only help the kids go to get a start in higher education, but it also was, even if the kids didn't stay in Garrett County, it would better equip them to prepare for life and to be able to get a better job and things when they completed. I know Allegheny College is also has taken measures from the lottery money from Rocky Gap to be able to assist students in Allegheny County to go to Frostburg and here at Allegheny Community College, but it's based more on the achievement and their skills and their grades and things when they come through school. I don't think they're doing it for everybody. As far as the free tuition clear across the state to provide everybody for free tuition in the state, we need to really look at what that's going to cost the state of Maryland to do that, and that's really the big question.
Okay, and that's the way we will work it with the bell. If you're in the midst of a sentence, we're going to let you finish up. If you're in the midst of a paragraph, we'll probably cut you off. Mike Dreisbach.
How do you know if it's a paragraph?
Well, could be a run-on sentence, I guess, right?
It could be a run-on.
All right, Mike?
Well, first of all, thank everybody at WCBC for doing this. I think it's more important to have more of these type of forums, and being a first-time candidate, I tell you what, these are where everybody begins to learn what the differences are out there. We are very lucky in Garrett County. We were probably one of the very first in the nation to do a college tuition program so that if the youngsters coming out of Northern or Southern, they had an opportunity to continue at Garrett College. Now, there are some regulations on that, and they have to do certain things. I absolutely think that the community college here would be really wise to follow that. What I'd like to see happen, and I've talked to numerous people about making that program even better. So as the youngsters come out of the high school system, we want to make sure that if they aren't going on to college for a 4-year degree, we absolutely will give them a chance to come up with a skilled trade. And we want to be able to have them get a 2-year degree, and it could be in farming technology, it could be in HVAC or plumbing or electrical, so that we don't discount the students. A large majority of them are getting out of school, and unfortunately a lot of times the parents are saying, well, get out of the area because there's nothing here. But there really are a lot of jobs up here. So I absolutely strongly support it, and I want to make sure that as we go forward that Allegheny County has the same opportunities as Garrett County, and that's one of my goals as a delegate.
What about statewide? That goes to the question. Are you like it here? You like it in Garrett? You'd like it in Allegheny? Would you like it statewide?
I'm going to fight real hard for rural communities because we are really different. Statewide becomes a really big issue when it comes to the funding of it. But in our rural communities, we need to start to get a little bit better of an opportunity for our students. So it's something that's got to be looked at very carefully.
Okay, thank you. We go to District 1B now. Jason Buckle.
Thank you, Paul, and I also want to thank WCBC and the moderators and the folks tonight for putting on this debate. You know, I'm a big fan of community college education. My mother's sitting out in the audience tonight. I remember as a little boy coming to this campus, it was called ACC at the time, with her sometimes as she put herself through community college and an education that led to a 4-year degree and going on to law school, and that was only possible because of places like Allegheny College and the community college experience. So I'm a big fan of it. By the same token, I sat on the committee this past year that considered the bill that was passed. If you want to do this on a statewide level and you want to provide it for everybody, every soul, no matter what, hardly any academic qualifications, it's a great idea in principle. It doesn't work in execution. The thresholds for the income requirements, for example, in the bill that's existing are so high. It's 2.5, 3 times what the median household income is in Allegheny County. I think you can qualify as a family, even if you make $100,000, $120,000 a year, you can send your kids for free to community college. What that means in effect is a lot of upper middle class families in Montgomery County and Howard County and Anne Arundel County are simply going to pass the costs along if their child's not ready maybe to go on to a 4-year college or doesn't know exactly what they want to do at the end. And we all know that happens in everybody's life. There are kids sometimes that finish their senior year in high school and they need a few years to find their way. What's going to happen now is upper middle class families all across the state are now going to be able to access this program to pay for that, and that has a significant budgetary impact for Maryland. I'm a big fan of community college. I'm a big fan of funding it for STEM education, for skills training, for job-ready training, but the existing system is just a budget bill too big, too far.
Penny Walker, you're next on the question. Penny.
Hi, thank you, and thank you for this forum. I think it's a really great opportunity for citizens to get educated about candidates, what they stand for, what they believe in, what kind of delegate they might be to serve our area. So I do think, especially for our area where the median income hovers around $22,000, that this is really great for District 1B and probably all of Western Maryland. It is an opportunity for children who may be involved in the generational poverty that we have here to be able to have an opportunity to remove themselves from that poverty. And as a child myself who was in the system and in the foster care system, you know, there are more opportunities now, and I would like to see as many opportunities as possible. And it also helps with economic development because we do have a workforce problem here. And I think if we expand the public transportation system to get students from their homes to the community college, that the free education here in the rural area of the state. I am not a fan of statewide. I agree that there are counties who are very rich who can afford absolutely to provide an education for their community members. And I think because we are designated as being economically depressed, we should look and argue for as many advantages as possible for our area. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel Del Monte from District 1C.
I perhaps have a different take on this. My understanding of the community college system from its inception across the country was it was a follow-through after the state college systems were set up, which provided affordable education for people who couldn't afford the private schools. The original concept for the community college was free education, and it did exist in many places. And there is a history of it. I disagree that wealthy people would take advantage of it. The history hasn't shown that. In fact, people have self-selected for those in urban and rural communities who didn't have the means to get an education. My father had a 6th grade education and was a coal miner, and I put myself through school. And, you know, I was lucky to be able to get some grants and to go to a good school. And anyone who has the opportunity to go to a prestigious school will. The fact is, over the years, community colleges have eroded the funding. It's been one of the first places funding is chopped. So then you have higher and higher escalating costs to go to them. I like the idea. If we can get urban and rural people who need an education and can't fund it any other way, free education, I'm in favor.
Thank you. And again, Delegate Mike McKay from 1C is not here this evening because of another appointment that he had, because we moved the date one time. He could not make it tonight. So I wanted to make that if you tuned in late. With our next question will be Kathy Getty from First United. Kathy?
Local roads and bridge maintenance and repairs suffered greatly during the O'Malley administration when state highway user revenues were diverted elsewhere. Are you satisfied with the effort being made to fully restore these funds?
And we're going to start this round of questioning with Penny Walker from District 1B. And we'll mix it up this way so you're not following the same person outside of your district competitor each time around. So Penny, go ahead with that one.
Thank you. It's very difficult to be satisfied with the roads and the bridges and the infrastructure here right now. But additionally, when you're struggling economically and you're trying to attract businesses, you need good roads, good cell phone service, good water and sewer. You need the basics. And so it's frustrating, to say the least, that the highway user funds have been diverted in such a way. It is good that we have been able to get some of those back, and I think that while we are getting those back, and there is a sunset on that, so I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I also think it would benefit us to look down the line as more green automobiles come online and we start losing some of that gas tax and the revenue from gas so that we don't find ourselves in this situation again. Thank you.
Jason Buckle.
Thank you, Paul. I think that one of the greatest points was made by the questioner herself. These funds were cut during 8 years of one of the most liberal Democratic administrations in Annapolis that the country has ever seen. They were cut by people who are in power now of one party. And they were cut for one reason and one reason only: to take monies that used to be given to communities all over the state, just like ours, that came from our gas taxes that we paid in to repair our roads, to fix our bridges. They were stolen, essentially, to use for mass transit in Montgomery County, Prince George's County, and Baltimore City. Am I satisfied? I think that was the question. Am I satisfied to the level that they've been restored? No. Heck no. I'm not satisfied to the level they've been restored. Delegate Beitzel sitting down here. He's the leading proponent in the House of Delegates to restore those funds 100%. He's put multiple pieces of legislation in. I've supported all of them. I think almost all of the Republican caucus has. We've gotten some of the monies back, but a lot of folks on the other side of the aisle don't want that, and they're not going to let that happen because they want to spend the money on the Red Line in Baltimore City. They want to spend the money for more buses in Prince George's County. They want to spend the money for other mass transit improvements in Montgomery County. And as long as we have this situation in the state of one party trying to do things for 3 or 4 jurisdictions, we're going to have that problem. So I'm not satisfied with it. I want to keep fighting for it. I'm very happy that we've gotten some of the monies back, and I think we'll continue to keep pressing to get those monies back. But you want to know sometimes why you have potholes in the city of Cumberland? Go find Martin O'Malley, go find Mike Miller, go find Mike Bush, go find the liberal Democrats from Baltimore City and Montgomery County and ask them, because they've taken a lot of that money from us.
Very good. Our next answer will come from Daniel Del Monte in District 1C.
I shudder when I hear it turned into a partisan issue because, in fact, 20 years ago, there was the same problem. A lot of bridges and roads were getting Fs across the country. I think that, in general, we've allowed our infrastructure in the country to fall apart. And when I hear it's an either-or for mass transit or road development, it's a fallacy. It's not a party issue. This is an issue where we have let decades of our infrastructure fall apart. That's a federal issue. That's an issue that has affected Maryland less than other states in some ways, but certainly we're not one of the best. We're in the bottom half. And I think we need to, it's going to take a long time to fix this. And it's something that the partisan issue has only obfuscated over time. In fact, both parties have been culpable, and I'm agreeing. I think we need to look at getting past the party politics.
We go to District 1A now, and Mike Dreisbach. Mike?
Okay, I'm not satisfied, that's for sure, because in this campaign for the last 9 months, I've went to just about every municipality 2 or 3 times, and they're having the same problem. They can't just keep the lights on. A little town that's not even in this area like Kitzmiller, you know, if they pick up $15,000, you used to get $85,000 or $95,000. So what has to happen is we have to really take into consideration who we are. We're a rural community, and I absolutely think it's long overdue that we send somebody downstate of the same party to start making these people downstate understand that this is really for us to be fighting for in a rural location. So I can't say that it's always the Democrats' fault. It's the Republicans' fault just as much, because the other thing happens is gas prices were much higher 8 years ago. We got more tax revenue. If we have the current trend right now, look at the price of gas over the last year. We're going to see it go up again. So we'll get more revenue out of this whole bucket. But I think it's time for us to fight for our better, fairer share up here and make sure that if they're building new transportation systems down there, we're building new transportation opportunities up here too.
Wendell Beitzel.
Thank you. Really, we want to send someone down from the same party that's given us 40-some taxes and fee increases, increased the toll, taken away our highway user money. They took this highway user money away from the local jurisdictions in 2011, thereabouts, or 2009, excuse me. And the formula worked for 40 to 60 years. The formula was working that the counties would get 30% of the transportation trust funds, and the transportation trust funds come from the gasoline taxes, the vehicle titling fees, and the transfer taxes. That goes into a trust fund now that where over 50% of that money is being used for mass transit systems and not supporting our highways that are really paying for the money that goes into the transportation trust funds. When this happened, Senator Edwards and I both fought vigorously to try to keep it from happening. After it happened, I've introduced every year, almost up until recently, a bill to try to restore it in one fashion or another. Governor Hogan promised that he would restore it when he ran for governor. The very first year he was there, he put a bill in to incrementally restore it over an 8-year period. That bill didn't even get out of committee in the House controlled and in the Senate controlled by members of the opposite party that Mike referred to. Governor Hogan then, the very next year, we encouraged him to put it in the budget to try to restore it. He did, and they would not approve it in the budget.
Okay, we have a challenge on this. 30 seconds to Mike Dreisbach.
Well, obviously, they haven't been successful. So if Wendell thinks that you want to give him 4 more years to go downstate and do the same thing, it hasn't been successful. So what I keep saying to people, we can't waste 4 more years doing exactly what we've been doing, and someone else can go down with new ideas. It might not be the opposition. It might be some party that we can get together.
Thank you. Wendell Beitzel has a retort. He has 30 seconds.
Well, again, if you think that we're going to send someone from here down there that belongs to the same party that's controlled the House and the Senate and even the governor's position for years and years and years, and we're going to get more from them than what we've been getting from them, the more that we will get will be more of the same, more taxes, more increases, take more of our money. They attempted to take, not in addition to the highway user revenue, they attempted to take away our timber money, our state park money, the money that we get shared because of all the state lands that the state owns out here.
Okay, thank you. With our next question will be Greg Larry from the Cumberland Times News. Greg?
We're on? Okay, good. We're back. Good evening, candidates. What you're talking about there kind of segue into my question. I'd like to, not all of the listeners may know a lot about you, might not have heard much from you. Could you give me a little bit of your educational background and professional background, and also why are you running for office?
We're going to start with Daniel Del Monte this time around. Daniel?
Thank you. I've never run for elected office before. I've lived in Cumberland for about the last 7 years. I'm a homeowner here. I've gotten involved in local issues. I've been concerned about some of what I've seen. That drew me into getting involved with the Green Party. Some of the issues I've been very concerned was originally fracking. I didn't understand why we were doing it. As I got involved with it, luckily the state and the governor dismissed the issue. Unfortunately, we're still racing to put gas frac pipelines through the state under the Potomac River. Why? There's no shortage of gas. This is one of the most plentiful and lucrative things. There are government subsidies driving the exploration. The pipelines are going to take it overseas. This is a money boon for certain interests from Canada. Trans-Canada pipelines have blown up in West Virginia this year, and we're going to put it under the Potomac that provides water. There are issues in Cumberland with eminent domain and taxing the people on bond issues to turn properties that are occupied over to private developers to put in what? We don't even have a straight answer. That's why I'm running.
Thank you, Daniel. While I have you here, 30 seconds on why the Green Party. We had a candidate forum a while back, and we had the candidates explain why, because the Green Party is a new...
It's not that new. We've been around a long time. The Green Party doesn't take any corporate money. The Green Party is not beholden to anybody, therefore, once they get in office. There's an awful lot of divisive party stuff that both sides use as excuses why things aren't getting done. And I have very practical concerns about how we're running our government and how we're doing things here. And the partisan issues don't wash for me. And the Green Party is a good place to get away from them.
Okay, thank you. Our next answer will come from 1A and Delegate Wendell Beitzel.
Well, I was educated in Garrett County schools, very good education system. One of the second most influential man in my life was my biology teacher in high school. As a result of him and his help, I was able to go to Fairmont State College and got a degree in biology. After I got out of college, I went off in the Army because the Vietnam War was ongoing. Fortunately, after I came out of the Army, I went to work at the National Institute of Health for 3 years in cancer research as a microbiologist, and then was able to come home back to Garrett County, used the GI Bill to get a master's degree at Frostburg State when they first offered their master's degree in management. And then years later, I went back and got my MBA at Frostburg when they first offered it there. As a result of that education that I received from those institutions and from the schools in my county, I was able to get good jobs in Garrett County. And I ended up being the administrator of the Water and Sewer Authority for 18 years in Garrett County, and actually had a dual career, owned a restaurant, motel, and a food service facility for over 30 years that my wife ran the day-to-day operations. So in addition to working as a public servant, I also had a career in the business field as a small business owner in Garrett County, and those things prepared me to the point that I decided that I was so blessed, having come from Garrett County and achieved what I did, that I decided to run for political office, and the first time was a county commissioner.
Mike Dreisbach.
I've been coming to Garrett County, been coming to this part of the world for about 50 years, but doesn't qualify me for anything up here, but I've learned over the years. We've lived here for 25 years. What I will tell you, I grew up in Washington County. I went to Washington County schools. I went to Hagerstown Junior College. It was called a junior college that took care of the needs of the working group in that area. Graduated from Frostburg State. I actually have had a lot of different jobs when it comes to being an owner, a self-starter, an entrepreneur, somebody who's not afraid to change. In one period of my time, I worked at an aircraft plant, worked on an A-10 flight line, and built A-10 Warthogs in Hagerstown. I later became, through the ranks, the president of that local union. I went to work for the United Auto Workers as a temporary assigned international rep in Black Lake, and I really found out what I was supposed to do after a number of years and great opportunities. I became a labor mediator. One of my first labor mediation jobs was right here in Cumberland. I was the executive director for an organization called CALM, which was Cumberland Area Labor Management Committee. and was put here to try to see between both of the organizations. So as a labor mediator, I've spent almost 25 years working in the coal industry, the power generation business, and auto industry and aerospace. And my wife one day said it's time for us to change careers, and we did. We came to Garrett County, we came to Western Maryland, we started the Savage River Lodge, we have now owned the Cornucopia Cafe, and we employ about 90 people.
Interesting that you both have a background in lodging and food service. How about that? Let's go to District 1B now, and Jason Buckle.
Thank you, Paul. I was born and raised here in Allegheny County, and like a lot of folks in my generation, I graduated from Bishop Walsh High School here, and like a lot of folks, I went away at 17, 18 years old, never really expecting to come back. I went away to college in Virginia at George Mason University, and then went to the University of Maryland for law school. And I spent roughly about seven or 8 years, somewhere in that range, working at other law firms, predominantly some large law firms in the Baltimore area and also in Virginia. When my daughter, who just got married this weekend, so that's how long it's, when my daughter was fairly young, we made a decision to come back to this area to raise her and live around family and others. And so I've been back here for about 16 years, somewhere in that range, practicing law in Cumberland and really throughout the state. Predominantly, I'm in litigation, wide variety of civil litigation. I've had the honor of representing hundreds, maybe thousands of people and businesses across this area, including my good friend and fellow candidate, Dan Del Monte, who I've had the privilege to represent as a client. He's a great guy, even though we disagree about political issues. More importantly than all that is why I'm running. I ran 4 years ago because I believe very much that Allegheny County needs to change, it needs to grow, it needs to improve, and that we can do this working together as a team, but we have to get serious about it, honest about it, and we need more effective representation in Annapolis and more an effective voice for us in Annapolis than what we had. My Democratic predecessor was there for 20-some years. I've heard some of the Democratic candidates tonight talk about how much they're going to do when they get down there. The Democrats will just give them stuff. I didn't see it. My district was only represented by a Democrat since the 1970s, and we didn't get much of anything. So that's why I ran. That's the job I've done, and that's why I intend to keep going forward. Thank you.
Penny Walker, I'll give you the overrun that Jason got too, so go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I was born and raised in Allegheny County, and up until the age of about 10, I was raised in South Cumberland with my parents. My mother had a pretty serious mental health issue, which eventually resulted in myself going into foster care. So I bounced around 4 or 5 foster care homes, and when I was 16, I really remember digging in my feet. I didn't want to be in foster care. I quit high school, and I got an apartment, and I took a job at a sewing factory because I knew everything at 16. Who doesn't, right? Yeah, I'm the mother of a 15-year-old, by the way, right now, so I'm paying for that. But
1 more year to go.
So I got my own apartment. I walked to work. Luckily, unlike some folks in 1B, I was able to walk to work at a sewing factory in South Cumberland, and I went there every day. And I was able to save up enough money and buy a beater car and get a better job. And the guidance counselor actually came down, Mrs. Beverly Andrews, and knocked on my door. I was a good student, and she said, "You can't quit. You cannot quit." So I went back to school, and eventually I returned to the Maryland Legal Aid Bureau and worked with the 2 attorneys who actually represented me when I was growing up. And they were really terrific. And about 6 years ago, I opened up a business. It has financially afforded me the opportunity to resign from my job and represent this district. And that's what I want to do. I want to show folks what it's like when someone with no agenda and no financial interest, and I have not taken any corporate money. I've largely self-funded my own campaign because I want to work for the people of this district. Look at campaign reports. It's very telling. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that will bring us to our first break. We started with a car accident, and we have not wound up in a train wreck, so we're doing pretty good. Thank you for everything, and stand by for more of our coverage of our delegate forum here on 1270 AM, 103.1 FM, and WCBCRadio.com, and via Allegheny Media, a video stream on our WCBC Facebook page. We'll be back in about 4 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. We are in our delegate forum here. sponsored by WCBC with great help from Allegheny Media. Our next question will come from our morning news anchor at WCBC, Dick Yoder. And to answer the question first will be Mike Dreisbach, candidate for 1A delegate. Dick?
Okay, thank you, Paul. You know, it's been 25 years since the state of Maryland created the Canal Place Preservation and Development Authority. Do you believe the state of Maryland should continue to support the authority, or is it time to move in a different direction?
Again, this is Mike Dreisbach, candidate for 1A delegate.
We are talking to somebody who loves the tourism business. Okay, that's what we came here for. That's what we thrive on. And I think Canal Place is a great jewel. It's an opportunity. I will have to say that there are things that I probably would have done differently in Canal Place and just continue to throw money at it. I think that on the horizon, if they were able to come up with their idea of a river walk, and they work on the river and try to dredge the river and come up with some whitewater opportunities there. I also think that from a business standpoint, I'm the person who likes competition. I would much rather see 4 or 5 or 6 restaurants in the same location because then it attracts more people. If you really want to focus on the tourism piece of it, one bike shop is nice and they do a great job, but if I had 5 or 6 bike shops, we would draw a lot more people to that location. So we see that happening up in Ohiopyle, and there are some great opportunities in Canal Place. I think it needs some different thoughts on how we get to a different place. So,
thank you. Wendell Bites.
Well, I've been very supportive of the Canal Place Authority. And there's been numerous attempts over the years and the time that I've been in the General Assembly to take funding away from the Canal Place that the state's been getting. There was obviously the issue with the Foot or Die building. There was a point when it was either tear it down or find somebody to develop it, and they went through numerous years of trying to find someone to develop it. In getting the Foot or Die building developed, that provides additional revenue to Canal Place Authority to be able to continue without relying upon the state for funding. The thing that I was really concerned about when looking at this issue when they talk about doing away with the Canal Place Authority was the businesses that are there. I think we need to look at those existing businesses, and they've made big investments there, and their investments and livelihood depend on that place succeeding. I did support the legislation that went in this year to take a look at the whole authority and the makeup of it and the future of it. That bill has passed, and we're now looking at, and I think Delegate Buckle is on the committee that's taking a look at that to see if we can do better planning or if we can look at maybe determining how best to go forward with the authority to make it a viable authority so that we don't have to continue to rely upon state funding.
Thank you. We'll jump over to 1B and Penny Walker. Penny?
Thank you. My gut feeling is to continue to support it and see if we can turn the corner with it. There are citizens, neighbors, you know, our folks have invested a lot by being down there nurturing a business along that has only half made it. So I think it's only fair to do that, to afford the opportunity to keep it the way it is right now and have the state continue to fund it. It is a good beginning to economic development downtown and in Cumberland, and the mall and doing some other pieces of the puzzle to go with it. You can see it coming together, and it is so close, but yet so far away. And I think one thing that we could do with our designation as being economically depressed is we should have a different ask list. And maybe that list should include leveraging that designation in a different way, where we are providing incentives to the people who live here, who have suffered this on their backs for a long time, to rehab a building on the downtown mall and maybe not have a tax increase, or fix up their own home and not have a tax increase. And I think leveraging those kinds of things differently would be another piece of the puzzle that would come together with downtown. So I think we're close, but there are some other pieces that need to be included there. Thank you.
Also from 1B, Jason Buckle.
Is my mic working? There we go. I have as Wendell mentioned, I am actually the chairperson was selected by my colleagues in the Western Maryland delegation to serve as the chairperson on the task force that's currently formed about Canal Place. And we're looking at a variety of ideas. We have a wide group of people, state, local. We wanted to make sure as part of the stakeholders, we have the folks who own businesses there, Chuck with Karis Winery and Terry with the restaurant and Hutch with the bike shop. You can tell I know all these people. I've talked to them dozens of times about what they want and what they need on a first-name basis with them. The task force is going to look at a variety of issues of how we deal with Canal Place. I personally don't think, and I don't want to prejudge it because the task force's conclusions will be reached next year. It's not fair for me to say this is what we're going to do because I'm part of a group working together. But I personally think we probably need to make some changes. We need to allow some of the assets in the Canal Place area to be included. I mean, most people in Cumberland don't understand, and I don't understand. If you want to use that field that's over in Canal Place for an event and draw people to downtown Cumberland, you have to pay a separate fee and deal with Canal Place. But if you want to go do something on the downtown mall, you have to pay a separate fee and deal with the DDC. But if you want to go some other place in Cumberland, you deal with the city. We have too many groups. We have too many entities. We have too many governing boards for what really should be one cohesive approach to bringing tourists, bringing people, bringing businesses downtown and into the Canal Place area. I supported the footer building. I was kind of the tie-breaking or deciding vote 4 years ago to get that extra money. We got $1 million from the Hogan administration because we asked for it, Senator Edwards and ourselves, and I'm very happy to say that I think that project is going to work. It's already working, and a business will be opening there very soon.
Thank you. Daniel Del Monte.
Canal Place I see as a mixed public-private use of a natural resource in town that creates both industry and recreation, and it's appropriate for a government to provide recreation and parks. I think it is not a substitute for what the government needs to do to provide for the basic infrastructure, healthcare, bridges, roads, health hospitals that are shabby in this area. Our education is funded minimally. I don't think tourism is going to lead our economy. I think when government does its job, takes care of the things it's supposed to take care of, like funding our schools better, and I don't mean buildings, I mean education. When it provides for infrastructure, does a proper job to take care of our bridges and roads, businesses will come here when transportation is adequate, when we're not so cut off from the rest of the world. But I don't see a problem with the government pitching in and not expecting a return necessarily on developing a natural resource for recreation that will eventually be a tourist boon. I don't think it's there yet.
Thank you. With our next question, Kathy Getty. Kathy?
Do you support an increase in the minimum wage, and how would you pay for it?
Going first will be from 1B, Jason Buckle.
You know, Kathy, I don't support an increase at the minimum wage at this time. Maryland is in the process of continuing to increase our minimum wage now. There was legislation passed several years ago that every year, I think it is, our minimum wage goes up by an incremental amount. The big issue in Annapolis, pushed by a lot of liberal activists and union activists and the Democratic Party there, quite frankly, is what they call the fight for 15. Why is it called the fight for 15? Well, it sounds cool. It's alliterative. It could be the struggle for 16 or the fight for 14 or the tussle for $13.50. They just came up with this number. When you ask them point blank, why $15 an hour? Why that number? Well, it's for politics. It sounds good. It gets people fired up. Fight for 15. If you imposed a $15 minimum wage in Allegheny County, in a county that has a median household income of a little less than $40,000 a year, I want you to think about the impact that would have. As close as what we are to West Virginia and Pennsylvania, any business that came here that paid some of their entry-level and mid-level, lower-level employees $12, $13, $14, $15 an hour, and now we're told you have to take a 19-year-old with no experience, pay him or her $15 an hour. Somebody with 2 years experience, they have to get 16, 17, 20. It would be disastrous for our economy. So it might work for Montgomery County. It might work for Prince George's County or Anne Arundel County, and I'm fine if they want to do that for themselves and their economies with what their costs are. But I can't support that type of legislation for where we live because it would destroy business. And business is what creates jobs. Everybody says we want jobs. Businesses create jobs. They're not created by some magic fairy.
Penny Walker, District 1B.
Thank you. And as a business owner, I employ 28 people, both here and in Washington County. I have been interested in this. So it's not an arbitrary number, the fight for 15. There's actually some meaning behind it. And that has to do with cost of living, supporting a family. Folks have done studies, and it's not an arbitrary number because it sounds cool. At least I would certainly hope that's not the way the legislature is working and the policymakers are making names up. So with that being said, $20, we are not Montgomery County, and it would worry me to raise the minimum wage here to $15 an hour. We are not the same as Montgomery County. But I think this is also why it's very important to have a seat at the table when this is happening. Because if the minimum wage is raised in Maryland, having a seat at the table with the Democrats would allow us to have a say-so in the details, and maybe a tax credit for rural areas or areas that fall under the one Maryland and we're economically depressed. And although we need higher wages because we're economically depressed, we certainly can't afford $15 an hour. So I think that it would be important to have a seat at the table because those details will be worked out. The Democrats outnumber Republicans almost 2-1, and sending a Democrat down gives us a seat at the table while the details are being hashed out, which I think would work well with our Republican delegation. Thank you.
Okay, while we're in the 1B neighborhood, let's go to a retort from Jason Buckle.
I very much appreciate Ms. Walker's comments as a business owner. I think she understands how bad the idea this is. But I have to be blunt. That is ridiculously naive to think that she will go to Annapolis next year and have a seat at the table with Mike Bush and Maggie McIntosh and these folks that people in Cumberland and Allegheny County don't know. I never knew them either till I went. But there is no seat at the table for those type of, for representatives from outside of their core areas. There are only about 4 or 5 Democrats in the entire state, not from those core 3 or 4 counties. And they do not have a seat at the table. My predecessor sat here for 24 years telling the folks out there, well, I'm a Democrat, elect me, I have a seat at the table. And that was nothing but naivete or ridiculousness. That's not how it works in Annapolis. You need to learn how things work.
We go to District 1A now, and Wendell Beitzel. Wendell?
I do not support a increase in the minimum wage to the $15 an hour that's being proposed, not only here across the country. I've been a small business owner for years and years, and employing people, doing payroll, and knowing how hard it is not only to meet payroll but to stay in business. And the problem is, when we look at here in Western Maryland, we have a lot of small businesses. We don't have great big corporations and people that are employing thousands of people. And also, we depend, especially in the county that I'm from, heavily upon tourism. And so the thing that this would really hurt are the high school students that have summer jobs or part-time jobs, and college students depend upon the income in order to raise money to go to college. The other really, just think about it, the other really problem with this is when we artificially raise wages for the lower level or the lower tier of employees, you got to raise it for everybody. You have to kick everybody else up the ladder. And who really benefits from this in the long run? What you end up doing is causing inflation, and then you end up the businesses that have to pay this all have to increase the prices of their goods and services. So what occurs then is the government gets more taxes. So the sales tax increases, and then if you raise people up in tax, the income tax increases. And the government is the one that really benefits from this, and that's why they're pushing so hard to get it.
Mike Dreisbach, what say you?
What say me? I'm a conservative business person, first of all, I'll tell you that, and I'm not for the fight for 15, all right? And I will always go and tell people that are trying to push something on myself what I really believe. And I think that's what we need in Annapolis. We need people that can fight back. We need people that will stand up and say, I don't believe in that one, or I want to do something else differently. But the fight for 15, it really is ridiculous, because it might work really well in Prince George's County, where the minimum wage is already 14. 15 is not a big deal, all right? Up here, I can't afford, as a person who employs 90 people, to have a high school kid work in my ice cream shop and give them $15 an hour. I won't have an ice cream shop. So there has to be a market reality to whatever you do, and you really have to have people that are in the business world that are currently in the business world. You know, my wife Jan and I, every week we have to hit a $15,000 payroll every week. And for us to survive and us to be a small business up here, it takes a lot of working really hard. I'm all for giving people more money, but I want to tie it to skills. I want to tie it to their skills that they bring to my small business. I want to tie it to their educational abilities that they bring to my small business. And then we can have that conversation. As a labor negotiator and contract guy for a long time, you always have to ask the question, what is the reality and what is fair for both sides? It's fair for the company, it's going to be fair for the workforce, and we'll move forward that way.
Thank you. Daniel, oh, okay, we're going to have a retort in district. We can do that. 30 seconds to Wendell Beitzel.
Okay, well, you know, we really need to let the free market work, and what we see across the country today with the Trump administration and their policies that have drastically reduced the unemployment rate across the country, we see in the marketplace that the people, the business people and industry are having to pay more wages in order to get people. And so when you have the economy that's really working and booming, then the people that employ people have to compete for their employees. So they will raise the wages in order to keep the people that they need to have to work to keep their businesses going.
Daniel Del Monte. Oh, we have 30 seconds for Mike Dreisbach. Okay.
Yeah, I get a little tired of hearing about the Trump administration and how well they've done, because all he's doing is riding the curve of what was already done for the last 8 years. So guys like Wendell will sit up there and he'll use that as a way to convince people that you need to vote for a Republican. And I'm telling you that's not the truth, because what you need is you need somebody to go to Annapolis that's a business person that has current business abilities, not something from 30 years ago.
Okay. Daniel, we're going to get to you now.
Okay.
From District 1C, Daniel Del Monte.
There are a couple issues here I want to separate, because the talk of a minimum wage often gets conflated with talking, as you've heard here, about wage tip earners, people who don't get a minimum wage, that get $2 and change an hour, that has been popularized in the history of this country in Reconstruction when the railroads wanted to hire freed slaves for free and just let them work for tips. That's what we're perpetuating nowadays. And we take that issue out of the minimum wage, and we need to look at a living wage. People deserve a living wage. And I think we can talk about regionalized differences in what a living wage is. That's reasonable. But we also need to look at people who are wage tip earners. It's non-existent in Europe. Service is included in the fee. In the state of Washington, they've done away with tipping and giving a living wage. That's what they call it. Studies have shown that businesses are not hurt. There are facts involved here. You can have opinions, but the earth is flat or it's round. Take your pick. It's one or the other. It's not a matter of opinion. Look at the studies. People need a living wage. It does not hurt business to give them. There may be some exemptions for high school kids, but people earning a living deserve a living wage, and that can be included in our legislature.
Thank you. Before we continue with Greg's question, I wanted to go down the line here. We'll start at 1A and just go right down the line. This is a question from me. How can you make a difference as a delegate? Whether you're a D, an R, a G beside your name, we're outnumbered. And we have been, and it seems to be getting worse. We'll go to Wendell Beitzel on that first. Wendell?
Well, thank you, Paul. Obviously, I've already made a difference as a delegate. We've got numerous projects and numerous things that have happened to assist our area to not only better equip us as a government and to provide additional state funding for the government, but for numerous projects through bond issues, through highway projects. But I would say, coming from District 1A, I'm the only delegate. I'm for the Garrett County. I'm the delegate, the delegation chair of Garrett County, the delegate of one. And so, in the Maryland House of Delegates, there are 50 Republicans, and this is the most that we've had in this term, perhaps since the state of Maryland has existed as a state. So, being the delegate from District 1A, you have to work across party lines. You have to develop relationships. You have to make relationships with people that they know you're not just doing partisan things. As an example, I'm one of 50 Republicans in the Maryland House of Delegates. I was really honored this past year. I received the Charles Mack Mathias Statesmanship Award as the only Republican delegate in the Maryland House of Delegates, and they issue this award once a year. And the speaker picked me and they have what's called a Speaker Society event to be that delegate, and I'm really honored to receive that award.
You're in Annapolis for 90 days. How many of those days do you end up frustrated at the end of the day? Honest answer.
Well, you know, there are days when you're really frustrated, but it's a challenge, but there are really times when you feel good about yourself. The times when the budget's done. I'm on appropriations. When the budget's done and you work through that and you get things for your county and you do the best you can, and then you get selected to serve on the conference committee, which I have been for the last 6 years. So I think I've made inroads. I'm respected there, and the folks really do work with me and assist me in getting things and serving our constituents out here in Western Maryland.
Mike Dreisbach, how would you make a difference?
Well, what I've learned in life is pretty simple. If you keep doing the same thing over and over and sending somebody to do that job over and over and you don't get a different result, it's time to do something different. So as a consultant, as a labor mediator, I was brought into big companies, Fortune 100 companies. And when I would go there, everybody in that room knew the best way to do it. Everybody goes to Annapolis, they know the best way to do it. But my suggestion is they don't know the best way to do it because they only know what's in their box. And so as a business consultant, I have went into a lot of companies and upset the apple cart because the common denominator was, well, we've always done it that way. And you don't understand how the system works. But they used to pay me a lot of money to go in and help their systems get turned around. So that's what we need in Annapolis. We need people to go down to Annapolis. It's not a part of the system that's always been operating that way, and look for new ways and new ideas because someone new can see things differently. Unfortunately, you get blinders on. Whatever your job is and whatever your career is, after a while, you think you have the only way to make it happen. And the outside people, the outside consultants that come into businesses are the ones that can really help you make a difference. And that's what I'm going to take to Annapolis this time.
Jason Buckle?
Thank you, Paul. I think I have made a difference. In 4 years as a Republican freshman delegate, I've passed more pieces of legislation than my Democratic predecessor did, I think, in the last 20 that he served in the House of Delegates. We've changed the One Maryland tax credit. We've improved it. We've created biotechnology, cybersecurity, tax credit enhancements. Those were my ideas, and I work closely with Senator Edwards on some of those bills because we share tax issues. Me in the House, I'm the ranking Republican on that committee. He's one of the leading Republicans on the Senate committee that deals with it. We've brought money in for the footer. We've brought money in for Allegheny College. Do you know why? Because we have an outstanding relationship with the Hogan administration. One thing we haven't talked about tonight, I think I'm almost 100% convinced that 15 days from now, Larry Hogan is going to be elected governor of the state of Maryland again, and I hope that's what happens. There's two people sitting on this stage that have a relationship with him. His staff have been endorsed by him, know his cabinet secretaries by name, work with his legislative staff, work with his budget staff, and have brought things home the last 4 years more so than what we ever got under Martin O'Malley having Democrats in any of these seats. That's just the truth. But how do you do it? You get respect from people and you deal with people. I'll tell you the truth. Some of the closest friends that I have in Annapolis are Democrats. Some of the people that I've developed a bond with, that I know their families, I know their situations, I know their businesses, I like them. We disagree about issues. There is partisanship because there are issues that Republicans and Democrats fundamentally disagree about. But you disagree without being disagreeable. You work together on the issues that you can. People in Annapolis of all political stripes know how much I care about Allegheny County, and you rise up and you become a leader. I'm the highest ranking Republican freshman leader of any sort in the House of Delegates. That didn't happen by accident. I'm very proud and honored to do that for where I grew up.
Penny Walker, you get elected, what are you going to do?
What am I going to do? Well, I am going to focus on people over politics, and I'm going to focus on 1B, and I will not spend any of our political capital moving myself up the line or doing anything that doesn't directly benefit District 1B. I'm not looking for another position in government. I'm not looking to run for Senator Edwards' job. He'll be glad to hear that. I am looking to take care of the folks right here in the district. And one thing that I think we're doing wrong is, when I opened my business 6 years ago, and I was a first-time business owner, and I built a business from $123 in revenue the first day to now employing 28 people in 2 counties. So when you build a business and you look around at what we're not doing correctly, we need tax incentives that benefit the people that are already here. And my idea is to build it from within, and we'll build it here. The biotech tax credit has netted 3 jobs, and I'm not even sure if those 3 jobs were folks from here or they moved here. I have went over to try to knock on their door during the day, and I haven't been able to reach them or talk to them, but 3 jobs. We've netted 3 jobs. I've created more jobs in the past 4 years in my own business. I'm a businesswoman. I know how to create jobs and build the economy. Thank you.
Retort from Jason Buckle in 1B.
The biotechnology credit has been in existence for 1 year. Biotechnology, life sciences is the #1 reason that Maryland has a thriving economy in the I-95 corridor. #1. Federal government, biotech, biosciences. Why in the world would we not want to do everything possible to create more of an incentive to get somebody to move their company from Gaithersburg, from Annapolis, from Baltimore City, whether it's 3 jobs, whether it's 50 jobs? Let's not judge us creating incentives for people to move here and come here based upon that kind of analogy. Well, it hasn't worked so far in a year and a half.
Penny Walker wanted to respond. Go.
You did. You got too excited. Okay. I am not suggesting by any means that we do away with tax credits, but there are 28 tax credits. Have you looked at these? I mean, you can get a tax credit if you want to recycle oyster shells. So I'm not suggesting that we take away the tax credits, but it did take 3 years to get the tax credit, and in 1 year, we've created 3 jobs, if I'm understanding my opponent correctly. So what I'm saying is a different set of asks. Because we're economically depressed, we're designated that way. Let's think of some more creative things that we can put into place, like the Delegates office supporting volunteer grant writing, a bank of volunteer grant writers. We just need some computers and copiers, and we have plenty of retired professionals here who would be happy to volunteer. I've spoken with them. Thank you.
Daniel Del Monte, you don't have someone to go back and forth with like that, but I'm sure you have ideas.
Oh, I have ideas. So I'm going to show you what a politician I am right now by not answering your question directly.
Wait a second.
I'm going to come around to it, but earlier you asked about background, and I skipped it because I got on the soapbox. So I was born in eastern Pennsylvania in the Philly area. I grew up in a small town in northeastern Pennsylvania, anthracite coal region. My dad was a coal miner. I lived in a town half the size of Cumberland. I lived in New York City before here, 30 years. And I disagree with you about we're outnumbered. I defy labels, and I think most people do. I think that a lot of the problems we face are common problems, human problems. And if you're asking how we're going to be heard, you need someone who's not going to stoop to party line rhetoric. In fact, what we need to do is what government needs to do. And that's across the board the same thing everywhere. So if we're talking about education and there's a bill in front of the House of Delegates and your delegate is just voting nay instead of trying to engage in the conversation and trying to get our needs for our education met, which aren't a whole lot different than what the inner city needs or what the suburbs need. Transportation. We have public transportation needs here, not just highways. Don't tell me anyone living in Cumberland doesn't find our public transportation wanting. There are simple solutions that can be done here.
Okay. That's right, you can't. Unless you got a proxy from Mike McKay, I don't think you could do that, Jason. I can come back at you a little bit, though, Daniel, on this.
Do.
There has been little political debate that much of the attention of the General Assembly has gone to the Big Four subdivisions downstate. In that regard, the outnumbered point stands, and you stand in opposition to it.
So where's the red line?
Where's the red line?
There is no red line. They didn't build it. So, I mean, we're talking about some theoretical stuff that's convenient rhetoric. In fact, what can happen here is I am at a seat in the table right now, and I'm a quick study. I'll be one there. And I'm telling you, if you talk common sense and you do your homework and you look back at what really needs to happen, look at facts, not party lines, there are solutions and answers, and it's hard to resist those. By the way, I currently work at the Finance Center. I'm an occupational therapist.
Okay, we don't have a red line, but we've got an orange line here, okay? We'll just let you know that. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, Greg Larry will ask a question here on 1270 AM WCBC, 103.1 FM, WCBCRadio.com, and live on Facebook tonight via Allegheny Media. Back in about 4 minutes. Yeah. Might want to get back to the table if you're a candidate. If you're not at the table, no, we'll let you back at the table no matter when you get here. And thank you and welcome back. And again, we remind you that Delegate Mike McKay, unable to attend tonight's delegate forum due to a prior commitment he made in July to participate as a member of a legislative panel at the annual Rural Maryland Health Conference. He was available for our original date of October 9th. He regrets the conflict and is available to answer any questions by calling him at 301-697-2622. Daniel, you can call him and you guys can have your own little debate over the phone and let us know how it goes. Anyhow, our next question, I should say, is coming to Daniel from Greg Larry of the Cumberland Times News. Greg?
Thank you, Paul. We've heard tonight referred to a couple times that the Western Maryland delegation has a close relationship with Governor Hogan. Yet when it came to fracking, the Western Maryland delegation was pretty staunchly in favor of getting that through, but however, it did not make it. What was your reaction to Governor Larry Hogan's decision to push for a permanent ban on fracking?
Daniel, you're up.
At the time, there were two bills proposed, and one was a kick it down the can bill, so that eventually they were hoping, I think, to get it through when people weren't looking. I was jubilant that it didn't get passed. But as I said, I'm very concerned about the pipelines. One of them is going to be going through Hancock city limits. They got a $1,400 abatement easement to allow that. Their water is provided by two wells, one of which is right up against the Potomac. They're going to use horizontal drilling, which involves chemicals that we don't have the right to ask them about, to inject this pipeline under the river. No idea what's going to be in the water table then for Hancock. These gas lines leak. The water supply for Hagerstown, for the towns Williamsport and D.C. come from the Potomac, and we're taking a risk with this. We're not talking about global warming. We're talking about people's water, and we're talking about the near future. I'm very opposed to this, and I'm very concerned that nobody in the delegation is fighting it. The next line to stop this is the legislature, and if not that, then the courts, because the FERC has already approved it, the local community has approved it. My opponent has been to talk to them about this behind closed doors. There's no opposition to this. I'm really hoping to be there and say something about this.
From 1B, Penny Walker.
Thank you. So I can only explain Governor Hogan's actions by saying that it was the will of the people, which I think is great. And I think that Governor Hogan realized that. As I've been out to every single part of the district and the county, I have talked to people. This is not a red and blue issue. This is a bipartisan issue that people feel very strongly about, and I think most are opposed to it here because they stay here and live here because they love this environment and they value and treasure our natural resources. So I do know from speaking with Governor Hogan, I was a main sponsor of his event in Twigtown. I guess it'll be a week and a half ago. And I do know from talking to him, he works with Democrats, he works across party lines, and he will work with whoever in order to do what's right for the folks of Western Maryland. And he assured me of that. Thank you.
Jason Buckle, you consider Larry Hogan a friend.
I do. That was,
but you didn't like him after that vote, did you? Or that veto?
I certainly still liked him. Look, there's an old rule. There's a Ronald Reagan rule that people that agree with you 80% of the time are your friends, and people that agree with you 100% of your time is yourself. Nobody in politics, no matter how close you are, agrees 100% of the time. So I just want, I'm so close with him. In fact, that the event that Ms. Walker just described was the event where I helped introduce the governor from the stage, and he heartily endorsed me for election, as he has done over and over and over again, because I'm part of his team in Annapolis. That doesn't mean we agreed about fracking. I think Governor Hogan and his team bowed to statewide political realities. They don't want the League of Conservation Voters has a scorecard, and it comes out in the Montgomery County Democratic primaries. That's the only race that matters in Montgomery County. And if the League of Conservation Voters says you didn't back us 100%, you don't get their endorsement in the primary. The state political implications are what came in. And I just want to say this about fracking. I mean, I was disappointed in it. When I ran 4 years ago, I didn't run as a fracking proponent or opponent. I ran as a proponent of economic development. These folks are sitting up here and they're telling you how much they want jobs, and that's what we need. Wendell and I and Senator Edwards and Delegate McKay, we haven't done a very good job bringing jobs here. I've been there 4 years, folks. There is only one industry that has said, we think we can come to Allegheny, portion of Allegheny County. It's not really very much of District 1B, but a portion of Allegheny County, most of Garrett County. One industry. We can come there. We can create tens of millions of dollars, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, hundreds to thousands of jobs. We can't go to Carroll County. We can't go to Harford County. We can't go to Howard County. We can just go to you. And we said no. So I don't think you can say I'm for economic development, but I'm turning away jobs that exist. And if you're really concerned, and I'm sorry I'm taking the time, you think that this is about natural resources. The city of Cumberland gets its water from Pennsylvania that's had fracking for 10 years. We all travel across the river. The other side of the Potomac River is West Virginia that has fracking. So I think you're entitled to your opinions about what might happen, but it's wrong to say if we brought fracking here, it's going to be the apocalypse, because it's not the apocalypse in Washington, PA, and it's not the apocalypse in a lot of other places 45 minutes away from us.
Okay, you went overtime. You have pushed the line there, Mr. Buckle. Anyhow, we will go to Mike Dreisbach and see what his opinion is.
Did
Mike?
you get the hook out and take him off the stage is what I want to know.
Well,
it's real
next
obvious.
time around we'll bring a hook with us.
All right, so I'm going to really probably talk a lot about this one because I was heavily involved in this fracking debate. First of all, Larry Hogan didn't support it. He had a veto-proof margin in the House and the veto-proof margin in the Senate. And for about 4 years, while these guys were sitting down there, they're going downstate telling everybody in downstate that, well, everybody in Garrett County wants fracking. That was a lie, all right? So it took a lot of people generating the tourism industry up here to go down and make sure that everybody in the state who comes up here to recreate and has big houses at Deep Creek Lake, that their investments were protected. So that is really. I also, as a labor mediator, worked in Wyoming and Colorado, and I watched what fracking did to their areas. So what you have happen is, and this is the kind of crap that they tried to pass on everybody else, what you have happen, you have these job shoppers come into the area in their $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 motorhomes. They come in and they work day and night, 80, 90 hours a week, take all the money back to Oklahoma or Wyoming, and when they leave, the illusion of all the jobs we have here is zero or very, very few. They made everybody up here think that we're going to have all these tens of thousands of jobs, and that's what Jason just said. I haven't had a chance to pick on Wendell yet, but I'm telling you what, that was a big bunch of crap is what it was. So that I will always fight for this environment up here and fight for our tourism industry, and what they tried to sell us on was fracking was going to bring all these new jobs to us. It would have destroyed the Deep Creek Lake tourism industry. It would have destroyed the Yaak River. The town of Friendsville will be sucking water from Pennsylvania. So it's, this is the stuff that they've tried to pull back all the time, and I'm not going to sit here and listen to it because a whole bunch of citizens got together and put a stop to it, and Hogan didn't have a choice. And when he did it, Wendell got all mad at him, and he wasn't his friend for very long, and he had to take Wendell in and have a private conference with him. So there's a whole lot of things I do know about fracking.
Okay, we did have a double crap answer there, okay? So, and that means we're going to have to go down the line again to get the retorts, but Wendell, you get a first time around here. Go ahead.
There was just a whole bunch of malarkey and baloney stated there recently. I never had any private conference with Governor Hogan about this after this was all over. I never even met with him to discuss it, and I really haven't discussed it with him at length even up to this point. I was very unhappy and disappointed that he made the decision he did. When he first came into office, he indicated he would support natural gas development in Western Maryland. The only place there's any natural gas development ever going to occur in the state would be in Western Maryland. And as far as it not being an economic benefit for Garrett County, just think of the landowners out there that own the mineral rights under the property. Unfortunately, we live in a country where you own your land and you own your property, and that distinguishes us from the rest of the world. And so what happened here is what the state did was basically took the rights of the landowners that own these mineral rights, their right away from them to be able to sell and process their mineral rights because it was their property. It's almost like saying, you know, if you own land and you have trees on your land, you can go ahead and cut your trees, but you can't use a truck and you can't go out on the highway to remove the trees. So if you would think about in the neighboring states, just the impact of the landowners, the people that would lease their property. And I grew up in Garrett County when they were drilling natural gas wells. My dad leased the property. He got $1.25 an acre. That money helped him pay the taxes for us to keep the farm. And so I've probably done more for the environment in Garrett County when I worked as administrator putting in water and sewer systems. And to say that Friendsville is going to have to pump their water out of Pennsylvania where they're fracking is kind of idiotic. Because look at Deep Creek Lake and what we have and the quality of our water. And really, it isn't fracking that's made the difference. It's horizontal drilling. We've been fracking in this country since 1949.
Okay, I know Daniel wants to get in this fight. From 1C, here's Daniel Del Monte from the Green Party.
I wanted to add to the jobs issue that a lot of the people that do work on the pipelines tend to be there 18 months. They're itinerant. A roughneck makes, that's what they call them, makes about $33,000 a year. He can get more if he works 12, 14 hours. But then the mortality rate for people working on these pipelines is 8 times the national level. Mortality rate, they die from working on these pipelines, particularly when they're working long hours. So, you know, not a great.
Penny, anything you want to add? I'm coming right back up the line. It looked like everybody was waving at me at one point during this question.
Thank you. I will still say that I was stunned when I visited every place in District 1B, and sometimes I would go to Lonacone, which is not in my district, but I would go out there. It is not a red and blue issue. People do not want it, you know? So I think that however we arrived at the decision. But I was concerned, and I will add this, that there was a bill put in that made it easier for folks to combine mineral rights amongst different properties, which made it less transparent to the property owner if they were purchasing a house. So I think that that bill was concerning, which is not so concerning now because, you know, there is the fracking ban in place. Thank you.
Jason Buckle?
You know, there's 50 states in the United States of America. I think there's somewhere in the low 30s that have natural gas from shale. Not the Marcellus shale, but the Barnett shale, other shale formations. 30-some. 2 have banned it. 2. New York and Maryland, 2 of the most liberal, left-wing, blue states, rolled by the urban elite to a certain extent. 2. They didn't ban it in Ohio. They didn't ban it in West Virginia. They didn't ban it in Pennsylvania when they had a Democratic governor and a Democratic legislature. They didn't ban it in West Virginia when they had the same thing. It is ridiculous to suggest if it caused the problems that it said, we'd see it on the news every night. And one last thing I want to say. My family's been in Deep Creek Lake since the 1940s. My great-grandfather bought lots there when they built the lake. I have a home there. It's not a mansion. It's not a mansion by any stretch of the imagination. I'm far more concerned about putting people to work in the industries and the trades in Garrett County and Allegheny County than I am about people from Potomac and their multi-million-dollar mansions at the lake. Thank you.
Mike Dreisbach, what do you got?
This whole fracking thing, too, it boiled down to there were people at this table that had a self-interest to make a lot of money out of it. And so what really burns my butt is they were going to destroy the tourism industry that we really draw from in Garrett and Allegheny County. And so there were all kinds of bills initiated at the same period of time when we were fighting this thing. And some of those bills were just ridiculous. Well, if I can't use my natural gas rights, I want to tax my solar energy or my wind energy. And there were all kinds of maneuvering going on to try to protect the people that wanted to have some self-interest in their property rights. I believe in property rights, but these same people start to complain about wind turbines on top of the hill, and those people have property rights too. So this was really an economic thing, and it really boiled down to that the tourism industry in Allegheny and Garrett County won on this one.
Wendell Beitzel, I'm going to give you the last word on it because that's the way it went.
Well, thank you. Really, just let's think about it for a moment. Where would this country be if we didn't have cheap energy? If every state was like Maryland and New York State and banned fracking, that is really, it isn't fracking, it's really the process that after we have horizontal drilling that enables to remove energy from tight shale formations. We're now the #1 world producer in oil and #1 world producer in natural gas again. Just with what's going on now, like in the Middle East, they're talking about $200 a barrel for oil. If we had $200 a barrel of oil, there wouldn't be much tourism at Deep Creek Lake because they couldn't afford to drive their cars to get there.
Okay. I told y'all we'd get to about 7:30 and call it. Are you all okay? You're all okay with what you said tonight? I want to thank each of you for what you brought to the debate tonight. And it did get to be a debate tonight rather than a forum, and we're happy with that. We wanted that to happen. I think I know each of you a little bit better, and I think our listeners did too. And I want to thank each of you personally for running for office. You give us a choice, whether we like you politically or we don't like your politics or we don't see eye to eye. We know that we have a choice because of people like you. And thanks for coming out tonight and making your points and making it an interesting evening. We're going to run this back on the radio, and people can look it up on Facebook and find out who they want to vote for and who has made the best argument here tonight. I'm not going to make a judgment on that. I'm just here to say thanks. For all of us here at WCBC, for our panelists, Dick Yoder, our morning news anchor, Greg Leary from the Cumberland Times News, and Kathy Getty from First United, thank you for your time this evening, and a good evening to all of you.